Hello and welcome to Random Offense, where we explore the mixture, the meeting point of sports, culture, and politics. We will be joined by Katie Herzog of Blocked and Reported, our nation's foremost sports expert, and you will discover why. It will be fantastic. But first, we begin with Gen Z, and there was a semi-viral a little Twitter thread from a guy named Will DePoo. Apparently, he's a young man and he works at OpenAI, and he was talking about why Peter Thiel thinks that Gen Z is cooked. And there are a few great quotes that he has, very interesting for an old person like myself to get some insight into all of this. He says Peter Thiel is apparently quoted to believe that the reason why there have been so few great companies started by young people is that Gen Z as a group is cooked. When all status and relationship are digital mediated, appearance and substance decohere aggressively. The nice car, the funding round, having a product is only useful insofar as you can post about it. And also, when the perception of success comes much faster than the reality of it, motivation disappears quickly. Now, why am I telling you this? In theory, I talk about sports. It doesn't make any sense. It's because the Oklahoma City Thunder won the championship on Sunday. Still feels like it feels like a long time ago, but it happened just on Sunday. They were one of the youngest teams we'd ever seen, and they achieved the ultimate goal in sports. It was just a dominant season through and through. And the shocking thing about it was how muted the celebration was. The Athletic, my former publication, was reporting on how it was the most muted, just tempered, calm locker room celebration ever. It was just so strange that way. And hey, Trace, producer Trace, can you call up Jalen Williams, star of the Thunder, Jalen Williams, talking about his emotions at the height of success, at the height of accomplishment? Can we get that clip for a little Gen Z generational shock?
Mentioning just the realization of a lifelong dream. I presume that it's been yours as well, and as it's now here and it's real, you've had a little time to sort it out. What's the first thing that you start feeling and coming to grips with?
I don't know. There's so many different emotions throughout the whole entire thing.
I appreciate the honesty.
I don't even know what I was thinking about, bro. And then I walked off the court, and I'm like looking at my mom, and she's crying now. I'm about to cry. I'm like, I know the cameras are looking at me now. Yeah, look, there I am.
It's okay. Hey, if your emotions move you to tears, man, there's very few things in life better than that.
Yeah, it's just a lot of sacrifices. Everybody on the team makes sacrifices. You know, guys sacrifice minutes, time, hanging out with their family. You know, you lose friends, you lose family. Like, there's so much that goes on during a season for everybody. I just had that much emotion for everybody. Like, I just felt what everybody was probably feeling. You know what I mean?
Just feeling what everybody is probably feeling. It's just, but that wasn't the most shocking thing about it all. And this is why it's so perfect to have Katie on to discuss with us, and we can bring her on the show. The most shocking aspect was how these Thunder players regarded alcohol as almost a foreign concept, that they didn't get it, that they hadn't had beer before, a few of them, including Jalen Williams right there. They didn't know how to open a bottle of champagne. They appeared, and this was the strange thing to me, to only really know about tequila as the form of booze. Other forms of booze, who knows? There are two categories of alcohol, tequila and everything else. So that was the other aspect, where in theory it's good not to drink. Alcohol is bad. Katie's got a memoir about getting off the sauce, getting off the hooch. And it appears that Gen Z is not drinking so much, as reflected in surveys, as reflected by the shock of what we saw when they won the championship. But it does seem also connected to this other thing where they're not totally living life, man. They're not embracing all of it. They're not embracing the moment. So let's get Katie on. I want her, as a fellow old person, to try to analyze this generation and see whether this is all for the good, whether we're scared, whether we're intimidated by all of this, or, do we just need to accept it? Because it's not going any different than how it's going. How you doing, Katie?
Hi, Ethan. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh.
I think when it comes to this question, are you projecting a little bit here? Do you want me to be your therapist? Are you worried about your own drinking?
Yeah, I always want people to psychoanalyze me live. That's what I always want. That's what I'm always into. That's my kink, Katie. So
That's
come
why
on.
I call it two-way.
Okay, what is it?
So polling we know from polling that Gen Z is far less drunk than our generation was. And I think that is on some level is a good thing. This can be a good thing. Alcohol it's great fun. I had many years of enjoying it myself, but it also, as we all know, is incredibly destructive. It kills. You want me to give you some stats?
Yeah. Let's scare everybody straight, Katie.
Okay, so alcohol kill is responsible for about 175,000 deaths in the US
Jesus.
every year. Every year. It's a lot. And that doesn't include all of the other myriad harms. You know, the court system sort of buckles under the weight of alcohol, hospital systems, social services. Everybody in this country has been touched by alcohol in some way or another, except for maybe Mitt Romney. You know, it's just it's a poison. It's a fun one, but it's a poison. And I think younger generations getting away from that is good. The same way, our generation drank a lot. I drank a lot when I was in college, and then for the next 20
Yeah.
years after that. I still drank less than, my grandparents' generation. I wasn't drinking at work, at least not in a sanctioned way. There were no like 3 martini lunches at that point. And so every generation, I think, is boozing less and less as we have a greater awareness about the harms of alcohol. The problem, though, is that it's not just alcohol that young people today, that kids today aren't indulging in. They're having less sex. They're having less, and that, I mean, hey, sex, lots of complications with that too. Maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing, but my sense from polling, from data that I've seen, and just sort of the vibes that the tea leaves that I'm reading, not from talking to Gen Z. I've never done that, but just encountering them online, watching their TikToks. They're having less fun than we did. They're having so much less in-person contact with their peers. Not just Gen Z, Gen Alpha. People are just alone more. They're on their screens more. And I quit drinking, but before I quit drinking, I would go to bars, and bars from 2010, 2015, 2020, especially 2020, were different than bars in 2005. In 2005, if I would go to a bar, I would meet the people sitting around me. I would maybe bring a book and like pretend to read the book, but end up talking to
Mm.
the alcoholic beside me and making human connections. The point wasn't just to go to a bar and drink, it was to go to a bar and make human connections. After smartphones became so ubiquitous, at the tail end of my drinking career, when I would go to a bar, it's a bunch of people sitting around looking at their phones, not actually interacting with each other, which I find just that's depressing. You might as well
Yeah.
honestly save yourself some money and just drink alone at home.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in a way, once you start adding up all the harms from alcohol, it really doesn't seem worth it. And it's funny to look at this from this perspective as older people of Gen Z not getting it. But really, what it might be is that alcohol is so powerfully bad that you must be inculcated into a culture of doing it for it to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that was certainly true for myself in college. And it's just crazy looking back. There's the freshman 15. A lot of that extra weight that you put on, that's the booze. That certainly
Mm-hmm.
happened to me. And I look back and I think, man, that's just crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was just part of the experience, that it's that visibly unhealthy. So in a way, I salute the younger generation. And even if it wasn't the greatest celebration, and I've got nostalgia for watching these players have this insane catharsis that I've seen as a journalist in the locker room where they're just spraying champagne everywhere and just getting totally drunk. I do think that in a way it might be a good thing, but it's born out of some things that we don't like and some things that aren't so good, which is this extreme risk aversion,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of hermetic attitude, this idea that you can be a bit of an indoor cat, even as an
Right.
athlete, perhaps.
Well, and I mean, there are phones everywhere. So I think there's an understandable fear of public exuberance,
Mm,
because anything that you do, especially when you're an athlete, especially when you're a public figure, that can be taped and uploaded. And so people have this self-consciousness that you wouldn't have if everybody wasn't walking around with a camera studio. Everybody's a paparazzi right now.
yeah. I mean, you saw that with Jalen Williams. He was talking, it almost seemed like he had taken mushrooms and he was at the Versailles Hall of
Yeah.
Mirrors.
I
just
wondered
going,
about that. Is this also,
yeah.
or is the whole, and maybe this is an Oklahoma thing. I don't know, obviously, anything about the sports, about these sports or that team. But is Oklahoma a very like weedy state? Is
No,
everybody just taking edibles? No.
no, definitely not. There was a bar called the Pink Parrot that was the main Thunder fan bar. It was run by a former amateur porn star. It was about 6'8", named Big Rich, who ran the Pink Parrot. And it was going strong until there was a stabbing there and they shut it down. So
Oh,
that's a
too
little
bad.
bit of local Oklahoma
Yeah.
City culture, very different culture. They
Well,
do prayer
yeah.
before the games. They do
Oh, interesting.
yeah, before
That's
the
like
national
like
anthem.
my in-laws before dinner,
Yeah.
including in public. I do wonder, like, I assume that did the Eagles actually win the Super Bowl or did they just play in it?
They did win the Super
Okay,
Bowl. Those
so
Eagles did.
so my assumption is that Philadelphia was not a teetotaling celebration after
The
this.
players, yeah, there's a cultural difference. This isn't completely generational because the hockey, the Panthers, those guys, those kids, those whippersnappers were doing the breaststroke and the booze. So yeah, I think it's still going to go on. I should say something because I forgot to mention, you listening to us, people, you can ask questions. Now, we would prefer that the questions stay on topic, but I honestly have no way to punish you if
Mhm.
it's off topic. So that's a good thing to aim for, but I've got no deterrence capability. So if you want to ask questions, we can call you up to the stage and you can get in on whatever we're yapping about. But yeah, you're right. There are cultural differences between the sports. Some of these sports, they're still going to go hard, they're still going to drink. But I think you made a great point that you're more inclined to drink perhaps when you think you're not going to be observed. Because I have memories of some of the players who really party, and some TMZ reporter catches James Harden in his car and he's slurring and rambling.
The
And
guy who does the car karaoke?
James Harden, wait, no, it's James Corden. James
Oh,
Corden,
cousin,
unlike
his
James
cousin.
Harden, when one of the NBA superstars starts getting fat, people use the James Corden picture because he bears a resemblance at his most hefty. And unfortunately for that player, Corden has worn the very jersey, the Los Angeles Lakers jersey. So it's Luka Doncic in the first quarter. It's a photo of James Corden in the Laker jersey. It's all
That's
very,
cruel.
very amusing. So yes, yeah. Where was I going with that? But yeah, I think that maybe there's a little bit of a natural incentive structure there where alcohol isn't the kind of drug you want to be
Right.
using if you feel like you're going to be chronicled for everybody. But
Right. Oh,
Gen Z,
especially if
yeah,
you're an athlete.
yeah, yeah, I would say so. I think Gen Z, though, there is something to the whole being observed while performing reality, sapping something from the reality. I'm not great at articulating it extemporaneously, but I've seen it. It's like there is no reality. The only reality is the internet reality, and that
Hmm.
somehow takes away from just being in the moment. And it's
Hmm.
weird to connect that to the lack of going crazy with the booze, but there could be something to that. If you're like Jalen Williams, and you're hyper aware that you're being watched while doing your thing, you're not going to want to cut loose. It just makes
Right.
sense to me.
Well, even, I mean, from the data that I've seen, it looks like Gen Z, they don't leave their house as much. They don't
Mhm.
meet together with their friends. Their communication is happening online. And if your communication is happening online, it makes sense that you're not going out and meeting up with your friends at the bar, going to parties or whatever. And I like to I like to follow Mormon influencers on social media, particularly the
If I had a
attractive
nickel
ones.
for every time I heard that, I mean, do you really have to bring cliches here, Katie? Can we get a little something, something I
I
haven't
have
heard
this
before?
I just have this fascination with Mormon influencers. And one thing that fascinates me about them is that they have so much fun and they do not drink alcohol. They stay up all night. They don't even drink coffee, but they stay up all
Mm,
night drinking like Red Bull and Liquid Death and playing like drinking games with soda. And they're having so much fun doing it. And and what that tells me is that it is possible to have like a and they're all hot. It's very strange. They're
yeah.
all hot. And they're all probably also related to Mitt Romney. And they just have these like
Who's also
very,
hot?
he is hot. And they just have this very, I don't know, like almost almost childlike lives where they're not boozing, but they're just having so much fun. It is possible to live teetotal lives and have a good time. It really is.
It certainly is, but it's scary in a way. It's scary to be
Yes.
completely aware of what you're doing. And now you're living in a reality where everything is potentially chronicled and everything is
Hmm.
potentially displayed and they're used to it. I don't look at the upcoming generation negatively. I look more at my generation as people who crashed against the rocks of this, who came up without that expectation. And in a way, I think I even wrote a book about that, about how the millennial NBA superstars were cracking and they were going crazy. And the coaches were talking to me and saying, dude, it's just these players right now are completely
Hmm.
insane. And the thing they were going crazy about was that feeling of being analyzed and constantly watched in this way. And I didn't get it until it was visceral to me. This superstar on the Warriors, Kevin Durant, who is a bit of a poster and he's extremely online and very sensitive, but he lashed out at me in a press conference. And the next day, I turned the TV on, and on ESPN, the people on TV were debating whether I was in the wrong or whether I'm good at my job. And I just viscerally felt the insanity gripping over me, and then went, oh, we're submitting people in their 20s into whatever this is, combined with the internet. I mean, this is just no good. And then that's just a scaled up version, I suppose, of what's happening in high schools. Just this kind of public performance of the self is everywhere. So I think they're used to it. At least it's the water they swim in, I guess is what I'm saying of the youngins.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in high school, yeah, I hope that you're not putting your mic in high schoolers' faces, but I have heard that about you.
Well, that I interview high schoolers like a
Yeah.
Louis Theroux. No, that'd be, is that how you say his name? I have no idea.
Yes,
I've
you
only
said you
seen
said
it.
it right. It's through,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, that's good. He's so
Yeah.
good at getting information out of people,
He
that
is.
guy.
He's also very good at like a long silence.
Mm,
He'll let a silence stretch on for so long. He's like great at dead air.
I'm so bad at that, and it works as a journalist because it draws information out of people. Like in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, George Smiley, that's his talent, is that he's got an implacability and he just sort of peers into you and waits, and then people eventually fill the void. That's something I had to almost force myself to do in interviews, Katie. I don't know about you, because if I start feeling that pause, I just want to jump in. Okay, it's not weird. We're having a conversation. It's
Yeah.
not weird. You're not uncomfortable. It's great, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what jag I've gotten on there, and I've totally gotten thrown off track there, but it's okay. Let's switch to a topic that you're curious about. You know, we've established that you're the foremost sports authority, but you still have questions. You still have questions for me about what's going on.
Yeah.
And this one's weird uh, because you're a lesbian, I have stereotyped you as knowing everything about the WNBA, and yet
Hmm.
you asked me a question about what's happening, which is
Yeah.
confusing, Katie. You should be telling me what's going on, not the other way around.
That's true.
A-
That's
And
true.
yet you wanted to know why Caitlin Clark, who is now injured, perhaps not
Really?
coincidentally.
Did
She's
she
not
get
playing tonight.
did she get did one of her I was gonna say bandmates, did one of her teammates trip her? What did someone
She got
someone attack
mugged.
Caitlin?
She got mugged in front of everybody. Now, I think this injury you couldn't blame on anybody, but you could get creative. And it's odd that online dynamics are very strange because elements of the online right have rallied to her cause, even though she has done nothing. She has thrown them nothing
Well, she did
to
do something.
be white and good at
Yes.
basketball. Is that the?
She's I think you can just stop at white. It's got very
Yeah.
little to do
Yep.
with good at basketball. It's white.
She did that, and she is, I guess,
She should come out as
straight.
trans and just see what happens.
That's a real wild card right there. But
Yeah.
she, yes, she is straight presenting, I would say, because I don't
I,
claim to
you
know what's
know,
going on.
I would not call her straight presenting. I think she's got a case of gay face,
I'm
but
so
she does have a boyfriend.
I don't want to out my wife as perhaps having said something similar when just
Yeah.
riffing and just shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
But that's the official
Yeah.
Wikipedia narrative that we can go with.
It's
But
also
but
like there's a really thin line between like Midwestern face and gay face. So it might just be that.
interesting.
Hmm.
Midwestern face. Have I
Corn
gotten
fed.
My bigotry has not gotten granular enough because I should have that. I have it in other exotic ways. Do you ever see that Soviet Union police primer on the different ethnicities to recognize within the Soviet Union? They've got all
No.
the faces. It's like the same guy but different face. So you've got the Lithuanianized face, and then you've got the Jewish face. Maybe somebody can present it. Maybe somebody can find it. But I love that that bit of art. I want to get it for my
Yeah.
house. But where was I? Oh, you were asking why is she getting beaten up? Okay. And perhaps beaten up to the point where she's injured, and even though they've booked out American Airlines Arena, now there's no Caitlin Clark, so it might look like a completely comic scene of this giant cavernous arena with nobody there. Uh, I'm told it's jealousy. I'm told it's jealousy. Christine Brennan, journalist, really great journalist, has written about this. She's got a book coming out about Caitlin Clark. There's an interview with her, and I was listening to the interview today, and she's been attacked for getting on this exact topic viciously, mercilessly. There was this player who scratched Clark in the eye last season,
Hmm.
and it could very well have been accidental, but she just asked the player, was it accidental? Or, because people wanted to know and people were accusing her. Mostly on the online right, they were accusing her of having done it intentionally. And Brennan was just asking, man, you would not believe just the bricks that fell on Brennan for doing this. The players union of the WNBA released a statement demanding that she be fired or lose her press credentials,
Wow.
more accurately. So
Well, wait,
there's this.
what did the girl say?
She
The
said
woman.
that she didn't do it. I'm trying to remember. I can't. It was last year, and I can't remember. It was not convincing. I'll say that much. It could plausibly have been accidental, but the response wasn't the response you would expect from somebody who had done it accidentally. But
Hmm.
there was this attacking of Brennan as though she had violated some sort of sacred norm, and there was a lot of they would never do this to the men's players. And I've actually been in locker rooms where we've asked the players, "Hey, did you mean to do that?" Most amusingly was actually when Sean Livingston of the Warriors accidentally hit Dirk Nowitzki in the Dirk, as it were, and the crowd went crazy and was booing. It got very angry in Dallas after that happened, and then Sean was in the corner. The media, we literally cornered him to ask about it and to extract an answer. And Andre Iguodala shouted, Warriors player then Andre Iguodala, "Look how they got the black man over there," as we cornered Sean in the locker room to demand answers. And then the next day, Dirk was asked about it, and he didn't seem too offended. And he said, "Actually, Sean told me that for a white guy, it was pretty impressive." So that's sort of, you're allowed
Nice.
to have a sense of humor in the
Yeah.
NBA, I guess is what
Yeah.
I'm saying when I tell that particular story.
But not the WNBA.
No sense of humor allowed yet. That's not okay. That's not
Yeah.
cool. Brennan violated something, and it's just one of these things where there's profound resentment, and maybe this ties into the earlier topic that it's almost like the quote about academia, how the fights are so vicious because the stakes are so low, that when
Hmm.
there's not money involved necessarily, you're not getting paid a lot to play in the WNBA. It's an attention economy. And even if
Hmm.
logically we might know that she's bringing more attention to everybody, there are still those instincts that, hey, somebody is just bogarting all the attention over here, and I don't like it. And
Yeah.
that's why they left her off the U.S. Olympic team. That they all got together like mean girls and then let her on it last season, which Brennan has also talked about. So
How much better is Caitlin Clark than stars of the past?
I want to monopolize this contrarian spot right now because she's had a bit of an up and down season. I want to call her an overrated bum and just watch people react just for
Mm-hmm.
fun, just to see it. It's less about better, it's more stylistic. It's
Mm-hmm.
more the way she plays is reminiscent of a Steph Curry when you've never seen that sort of thing versus who's the best. There's
Okay.
a player, Nafisa Collier, who's been the best player this season, and nobody really cares or talks about
Never heard
her.
of her. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's also, I mean, you can have your conspiracy theories there. She's got a white husband and a kid, Katie. So, we
Mm-hmm.
can psychoanalyze how they're not really uplifting Collier. So,
Right.
yeah, I
Well, I mean,
think, yeah.
do you think race is a part of I do think that race is a part of the online rights defense of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Do you think race is a part of her, let's take the online right out of it, a part of her popularity?
I'd say so, but it's always confounded by everybody's reacting to the reaction of everything. And it's almost less so that a bunch of white people go, "Oh, a white, that's amazing. I'm into this." And more that they see that there are all these people who are angry at her and are
Uh-huh.
being unfair to her. And then it kind of builds the attention and there's this cultural heat from it all. So I
Right.
cannot disaggregate her
Right.
being white from whatever's happening. And the thing that people might not understand too, if they've never watched the WNBA, and that cohort is actually fairly sizable, is that it's not unusual for there to be a white star. So to
Okay.
attribute the success purely to that, as other people are doing, makes no sense because there have
Hmm.
been a bunch of white WNBA stars. So it's this moment. There's an unspoken aspect to it too, which is that Barstool's Dave Portnoy really got behind the Caitlin Clark phenomenon early on. So there's this aspect of resentment towards her fans because there are a bunch of these deplorables, these frat boys, these MAGA people who have
Yeah.
made it unsafe, and we don't want them involved and in here and in the tent. It's all just creating all this heat, except now she's hurt. So I don't know. Maybe people won't care about the WNBA anymore. So
Do we know anything
actually,
about her politics?
she liked a post, I think, by Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris.
Okay.
She has done somebody called it a basketball land acknowledgement of talking about her privilege and the black women who have built the WNBA. And so
Yeah.
she has hit certain progressive notes, but has mostly stayed out of politics. And there's all this pressure for her to speak more and more. And there's been this resentment towards her that she's not using her platform. And the WNBA, Katie, is in this place I like to call Earth 2,
Mm.
where Kamala won. We care about all the things we cared about in 2020. And those
Hmm.
are the internal pressures on her. So she has not been overt, but she's certainly not given the right anything to love. And frankly, if I am to just counsel the online right here, and I'll speak to one of them as though they're all of them. Who would that person be, by the way? Would it be Charlie Kirk? Who would it be who I'm talking to right now?
Yeah, I think he's a big women's basketball fan.
He posts about Caitlin Clark.
Of course.
So
Of course.
I would pull them aside and go, this looks pathetic, man. You look
Yeah.
like a bunch of simps. She's not even out here supporting you. You don't need to
Yeah.
get involved in all of this. You don't need to chase engagement in this way. You
They need
know,
someone like Leah Thomas. Like that too.
the right needs their own Leah.
Yes.
In what sense? In what sense specifically do you mean that?
They need someone with bigger shoulders.
Yeah, I think I just think maybe they should wait for somebody to actually
Right.
reflect their politics. And that would be
I'm,
fascinating if Caitlin Clark did. That would be so good for
yeah.
content
I'm
for me.
sure I'm sure there's a what's his name? What's my favorite basketball player's name? Myers. I'm sure there's a Myers Leonard
You're
of
talking
the
about
WNBA.
I don't think he's an anti-Semite.
No,
I
he's
think
just dumb.
yeah, he's just dumb.
Yeah.
He said kike while playing a video game. I don't even think
Yeah.
he knows what it is. It's
No.
just a,
Now he does.
well, now he does.
Yep.
And they took his career from him. So no, I think his career petered out because it petered out. I felt bad though,
Yeah.
as a
Well,
kike.
he's remaking himself as a country music star.
How do you know stuff like this? I don't know stuff like that. Is he
He-
really doing that?
yeah. He's also one of my Instagram favorites.
Yeah. Well, here's the take. I don't think that we should hold anything 7-footers say about race against them because they are post-racial.
Yes.
7-footers have no race. You might be saying, what do you mean by that, Ethan?
Right.
It is the most apparent characteristic they have, and it transcends. And so that's the thing about them. It's not, oh my God, look, a black guy. It's that person 7 feet tall. And so
Right.
I think they should get a little bit of immunity there when it comes
Well,
to racial issues.
I think anything because the amount of time it takes from the blood to get from your feet to your brain. I mean, we should do some IQ testing on 7-footers. They probably have a like actual cognitive disability because they're so tall.
I can't wait for that exact part to get
Would,
aggregated.
would you guys like to take a question?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. There are people here. Oh, shit. I forgot about it. We were talking about IQ tests of 7 foot. Yeah, question. Who wants to ask a question? It better be on topic, that specific topic, or we don't like it. That's the topic we want to discuss. Uh, Christopher, is it Ezel? Is that how I pronounce it, Christopher?
It's Ezel.
Ah, damn it. Well, that makes a lot of sense, sir. What question do you have for us?
Well, it's actually hitting on the exact topic you were just talking about.
Uh-oh.
All right. No, you were talking about 7-footers and then how they're a different type of person, right? And
Yeah.
all right. So imagine if you're extremely tall, you stick out in every place in the world, right? Everything you've done, both as things you're aspiring to do and otherwise, has essentially been on videos that you're 10 years old.
Mm.
If that's the case, does it really shock you that some of these Gen Z NBA players aren't really drinking heavily because they stick out everywhere?
It's a good point.
And everything they've ever done has been on video, and I'm sure they're getting media training about it. So, and then my other question is, Ethan, you talked about the somebody call it, saying she made a land acknowledgement. To quote Aaliyah, "Are you that somebody that said she made the land acknowledgement?"
I did
Thank
not
you.
say that. Actually, I know who said it. Ben Shapiro said it, and a bunch of my NBA friends were sharing it in private. People who would never publicly want to be close to anything Ben Shapiro had said were in the back channel saying, well, that's kind of funny. That's pretty funny. That's amusing. In the NBA, a lot of people roll their eyes at the WNBA. Hate to tell secrets, but that's the case. Now, to what you're saying, yes, I think we finally have an answer as to why 7 foot tall Thunder big man Chet Holmgren in the celebration referred to Michelob as Michelob. He got that Michelob. For you don't know this, Katie, but he is white and he talks with a black accent. That's the other amusing thing, and
Nice.
also more evidence that they are transracial.
Yeah.
The 7-footers.
Well, I'm glad to
Indeed.
hear that a NBA player can read.
Well, that's just one of these things where are the young people wrong or are we just used to doing it the wrong way? It looks like Michelob.
It
That's what it
does.
looks like.
It
I don't
does.
I don't know why it's Michelob. Okay. Well,
And
thank you
he's
so
from
much.
he's from
Yeah.
It's an
Minnesota.
anti-Irish slur.
No, he's
Yeah, he's
from
from Minnesota.
Minnesota too. They drink heavy and they drink beer in Minnesota. It makes it even crazier that he's never heard how it's pronounced.
Well, dude, before we bounce you out of here, I really can't get over how a lot of them, when they hated the taste of their first beer, were asking for tequila. A couple of them were doing that. It was so strange. And the explanation I got is tequila's referenced a lot in rap, so they know that that's a brand. And it really did seem like they were only aware of tequila, like the way a Xerox is the way you make a copy back in the day, to date myself. It was so strange for a guy just to watch somebody take a little sip of an inoffensive beer and make a face and go, what about tequila? Can we get tequila instead? Just not even knowing that that's going to go crazier. It's just I'm tickled by it. I find it endearing, the young
Michelob
people.
is pretty gross.
Yeah, I would say so. It's not Miller High Life, the champagne of beers
Right.
or whatever. But anyway, great questions, Christopher. Appreciate it. I'm gonna transition us to the Quinnipiac poll that just came out. I was alerted to it. By Mark Halperin, covering just interesting sports opinions out there. You learn about your fellow countrymen and women, things you didn't know. Here's the main thing I didn't know, and I want your thoughts on this gender gap. This is a gender gap that I could not have foreseen. It is the robot umpire gender gap. So, women at 71% oppose using robot umpires instead of a human being, whereas men, 59%, oppose using robot umpires, but it appears it's gaining steam using robot umpires. Is this an example, Katie, of women rejecting the science? I mean, what's
Modernity.
going on? Why can't they get on board with this?
Okay, I can't answer this until I know what a robot umpire is.
Robot umpire is a robot that they wheel out there to fire beanbags at the pitcher when he's not pitching fast enough. No, a robot. The idea is that you know if it's in the strike zone or not,
Right.
and you don't need a human being to guess. We employ a human being to guess. We can see the little box on television, and then we get mad at the umpire when he screws it up. But this is all in the gray zone because sometimes people go, hey, that's his strike zone. And he calls it consistently. he likes that high strike or he doesn't give that low strike. And nobody ever really specifies whether there's an actual objective strike zone or whether you're allowed to be a human being and inject some of the imperfection and romance of life, as we've been discussing. I like that we get mad at a guy. I don't want that to go
Mm.
away. I'm with the women because I'm a true feminist. So that's what I will say.
Does it have anything to do with the outfits? Do you think that women they want the
Oh, they
umpire to wear the outfit?
they like a man in uniform, but
Yeah.
that seems like something Ayla would be into, that he's wearing
Yes.
the crazy mask and he's in the
Yeah.
whole getup. There's like a kink factor there with the umpire. I don't think that's what most women are into. I'm just guessing. I've never
Maybe
met a
it's
woman. So I'm just guessing.
I wonder if women are more concerned about the job loss. I mean, there must be at least 2 or 3 umpires in the MLB. Are they
Mm.
just concerned about the encroaching AI apocalypse?
Yeah, a lot of, just by coincidence, wives of umpires happen to be surveyed in this sample
Yeah.
and screwed up the
Yeah.
responses.
I'm
Uh,
surprised about this. I mean, it would seem to me I get the theater of it, and you like the guy going, "You're out," or whatever.
yes,
That's kind of cool, but it seems like accuracy would be just as important. Maybe it's not.
I'll tell you one thing. My wife doesn't care about sports, but she has a favorite sports clip and it involves umpire error. As
Mm,
strange as that sounds, there's this clip. It's from a few years ago, not even a few, maybe even more like 10 years ago with the New York Mets. And the very old manager of the Mets, remember his last name was Collins, I believe. I wasn't following baseball much back then. I was covering basketball day to day, but he's an old manager. And it always looks so ludicrous because they have the managers in the uniform of the players, which as they get
mm,
portly, it just looks so silly. It almost looks like a little kid wearing pajamas or a toddler
mhm.
wearing pajamas. It looks so funny. And he got so angry, and I guess that they were going back and forth. I think it was the Mets and the Dodgers where guys were throwing at each other, and he runs up there, and the entire thing is recorded because I guess one person was mic'd up, and you get this inside interaction that you never get, and they're using lingo you don't know that they use, where the manager is trying to explain how he's got to go about it. He was saying, and I had never heard this phrase before, "My ass is in the jackpot." I'm sorry, my ass is in the jackpot. My
And that
ass is in the
means
jackpot now. My ass is in the jackpot. I can't. And it's so. My wife said it was like Death of a Salesman. There's this kind of pathos to it, and the old manager is going, "You gotta give us a shot. You gotta give us a shot." And so, I don't want that to go away. If I
yeah,
can get
yeah.
that, I want
Okay,
that.
I'm convinced. At first, I was ready to ship all the umpires out, but you've convinced me. We need that. We need to keep baseball like mildly more interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's look more at some of these Quinnipiac results. We've talked about the WNBA. Some of these responses are just so funny to me. Roughly one third of adults, 32%, say they are paying more attention to women's professional basketball compared to 5 years ago. Well, 52% say they are paying the same amount, and about 10% say they're paying less attention. These hipsters, do you believe them? I don't believe them. Who are these people who are watching
Hmm.
more WNBA basketball 5 years ago than now? It just seems unlikely. I mean, do you
Uh,
believe any of these people? Do you think that this is one of these things like how people said The Economist was the best read magazine nobody reads because
right.
people in the past wanted to make it? Did they think that it's a feminist thing, or do you really think that
Hmm.
Caitlin Clark has ginned up that much interest?
Well, I need to see the methodology of the poll. How many respondents did we have here?
We don't have the crosstabs.
Okay.
We don't know where
Yeah.
Hispanics are at.
Yeah.
The shy Trump voter, I
Yeah.
don't know if that has been massaged in there.
Yeah.
So Quinnipiac, well, you're on notice. We're gonna look into it.
Yeah. Maybe these will people who are protesting something.
I mean, I think it's impressive. The thing is, we have viewership, so we have data to suggest the Clark
Mm,
effect. So
right.
maybe it is one third. What's interesting about it is there's not much of a gender gap there. Is like as many men and women are going, "Oh, this is interesting. I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna look into it." But yeah, I just think that hipster contingent is highly amusing to me. Are you in
Oh,
that?
I
Yeah.
think I figured it out.
Okay.
It's
Let me know.
ex-lesbians.
Oh, the Clark haters? Is that what it is?
It's just women who they went through a phase. They were in their
Oh,
bug phase. 5 years
Yes.
ago. And then they
Yes.
met a man, and now they're no longer watching WNBA. This is a known phenomenon. This has to be it.
Mm. I mean, I actually have no insight. That's a stereotype, and I'm making you now the representative of all lesbians who's
Well,
going
I
to tell me,
am.
yeah, of course. You're one of the most prominent ones, and it's
Oh yeah.
a disappearing group. Unless it has
Yes.
okay, it hasn't stopped disappearing.
Well, I think we're back on the upswing, but I did see a poll the other day from 2024, and this was a Gallup poll of 900 LGBTQ aligned, self-identified members of the population. And this poll found that of the 900 people that they surveyed, 21% were gay, called themselves gay, or 56% called themselves bisexual,
Hmm.
21% said they were gay, 15% said they were lesbians, and 14% said they were trans. So there are almost as many trans people in this poll as lesbians.
I wonder if that's going to
They're all on the Penn
reverse.
swim team. Yes, I think it'll
They're
reverse.
all on the Penn swim
Yeah.
team. I wonder if there's a way to reverse that, or that is going to be, that would be great when Vance runs in 2028,
Hmm.
expanding the sapphic population. That would
Yeah.
be a good wild card thing for him to run on right there.
I did learn
I,
something about prominent lesbians today. So, Martina Navratilova,
hmm
her wife is on a reality TV show.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I
she's
didn't know.
married and her wife is on a fucking reality TV show. So Martina Navratilova is on like Housewives of Miami.
I love it. Do we know who this person is? Somebody can figure it out and say it in the
I
chat
don't know her
if
name.
I don't
She
know either.
apparently, according to my wife, she owns a farm and she's unhappy with her life. A little empty nest syndrome.
How, how does your wife know that about that woman?
She's gonna kill me for admitting this publicly, but she watches reality TV.
Okay.
She has
Well, that's
like
okay.
she has a there's a lot of good things about her, but she does watch reality TV.
So many people do. Okay. As long as we are just stereotyping you and getting your opinions on various gay matters, what do you make of Pride Month in sports? I
Mm,
am going to admit something. I feel like a lot of it continues because people don't want to be the weird person to speak out against it.
yeah.
Personally, it's like I'm not offended and angry that when I go to the New York Mets social media accounts right now and their Twitter, the Mets logo is all the gay trans flag. But I think it's weird. I think it's weird to do that for an entire month. I actually don't think it'd be weird to do it for a day, but like for
Hmm.
an entire month. And I think it's weird because the baseball players themselves aren't really about it. So there's just something inherently strange to me about everything about the Mets as you look at them right now. You're supposed to think about gay and trans, even though the players really don't seem to endorse that lifestyle, as it were. And we're doing this for an entire month. It just seems like nobody in the boardroom raises their hand to say maybe we should cool it, because then I don't know, you're regarded as somebody who's
Right.
really fired up about it in this negative way, as opposed to going, it's kind of, it's a little much. It's a little
Yeah,
much. That's
I'm
my
with you.
take.
I think it's a little much, and I'm actually sort of surprised to hear that sports teams have continued this trend because it's on the wane in corporate America in general.
Yeah.
I went to a Target the other day specifically to see if Target had their usual trans or gay pride
Yeah.
regalia everywhere. No, there was not a single rainbow to be seen in my local Target. And this is, I think, direct result of backlash. There was a boycott of Target a couple years ago because they were selling stuff in the kids section that, libs of TikTok got a hold of these pictures or
Mm.
whatever, and huge backlash. And so they are no longer celebrating Pride. And I'm actually kind of surprised that this hasn't happened in more places because it's kind of on the way, the
Mm.
right is ascendant culturally and politically, and corporations just go
Well,
where the
that's
wind
why I
blows.
had you on as
Yes.
the most prominent right-wing
Yes.
commentator. I had to get
Yeah.
with the wave, but continue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So I'm surprised they're not, instead of I'm surprised that they're still doing rainbow stuff instead of like changing the Mets logo to like a Pepe avatar.
Well, I have a theory about what's happening that I'm 100% convinced about, but it's hard for me to articulate it extemporaneously without feeling as though I need to do a little dance between
Disclaimer.
landmines.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here is my theory. I've put it into perhaps more articulate words when I analyzed the NHL and why they were so in on this stuff about a year or two ago. Sports are heavily male in their hiring. For obvious reasons, you're going to have 12 people on say, an NBA team who are going to be men, or I should say baseball, as they actually play during Pride Month. And so many of the people you hire are going to be male, and you need to even it out because you don't want to get
Hmm.
sued for some sort of imbalance. So where do they put the women they hire?
Marketing,
They put them in marketing and they have them
HR.
run the social media.
Yeah.
And you got to give them credit in a way. I think many of the people they've hired are crazy to me and they just, they do current thing, kind of mimetic, hop on board stuff, but they're also, I think, often willing to risk getting fired or reprimanded because the cause is so important.
Hmm.
And so there's this element of these teams just ceding this territory to a 23-year-old woman that they've hired to become the voice of the New York Mets or
Yeah.
whatever. And then once they are on the side of social justice, I think there's a lot of hesitancy to step in and actually send that email
Right.
and become a news story
Right.
because you had an issue with what she was posting. So I think it's an example of younger people kind of grabbing the mantle and broadcasting what they want to broadcast. And then there's this media unwillingness to just raise your hand as I'm doing and going, it's a little weird. It's just
Yeah.
a little strange at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. We should still be doing this to this extent. A month is a long time. These
Yeah.
these words do not get said.
I think your theory seems absolutely reasonable to me. And of course, young women, like everyone else, I mean, are their own attitudes about social issues shift as well. Catholicism is in, trad wives
Tradcath.
are in, trad.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the next thing.
Yeah, I think Tradcath, that would be a good spin on it. I think actually that's a good example of why, because I think a lot of our friends in our social milieu wonder, why would anybody have an issue with this? Why do you have an issue with this? Why are you filling your diaper or whatever they say on Blue Sky when they're not threatening to kill Jesse? And
Uh-huh.
you could make it clear to them if you gave them a hypothetical for some sort of cause that they didn't hate, but maybe weren't completely into,
Hmm.
and they would regard that as weird if Christianity became the thing outside of, I guess, Christmas.
Right.
People would say Christmas, but just, Christianity or Lent, I think people would go, yeah, it's a little bit strange. And I should say, when I give my theory, I speak from some experience. I'm not just kind of hypothesizing. I've known some of the people who have run these accounts and seen what's posted. So, yeah, it gets a little Earth 2 there on that aspect of the sports megaphone.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it continues, even if, ironically, these parts of life that are less male and maybe less conservative phase it out.
Yeah. I'm going to try to articulate why this shit annoys me.
Mm,
Because of course, I'm not opposed to gay rights at all. I'm a homosexual. I'm like a 7 on the Kinsey scale.
mm.
I'm married to a woman, big fan. But this sort of shit does annoy me. And when I was younger, I probably would have said that it annoyed me because of the corporatization of Pride. The first Pride was a riot. Now it's a mall. But that's not really why. I think the thing that annoys me about it is that it feels very top down, very inorganic, and therefore
Yeah.
inauthentic. And I think that, there's been this attempt to diversify pretty much everything in American life, at least maybe not, I don't know, maybe not like even like a Trump rally, yes, to like diversify everything in American life. And it does, and it all feels very forced. It doesn't feel like it accounts for the very real preferences that people have, particularly jocks and sports
Yeah.
fans in this case. What was it, the Dodgers a couple years ago who had some in their pride celebrations, they
Yeah,
had
the
some like
sisters of
very
the
this
sisters of the
something
something.
mercy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
they were freaking out the
yeah.
squares, and then the
Yeah.
star pitcher Clayton Kershaw, who had some sort of biblical verse. I'm going to sound like Jane Goodall analyzing a chimp when I go some liturgical thing that
Yeah.
meant something to
Yeah.
him that was on
Right.
his face or hat. It
Right.
was there, I think, as a little silent protest for their Pride Night this year. But yeah, that
Right.
became this whole explosion out here.
Yeah. And when I think, I mean, I'm going to stereotype here, but when I think of who is probably a typical Dodgers fan, we're probably talking about a lower likelihood of there being like queer, trans. I'm sure there's a few, but like queer, trans radicals than like Hispanic families.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to do something that is going to offend the core audience, it seems short-sighted. And to do it for no good reason other than to sort of virtue signal that you are on
Yeah.
the cause of justice.
Yeah, this idea that the future will validate you, and so you're getting ahead of it, which I think people then make strategic and moral errors under that assumption, more so on the left than the right, that the future is all headed in one particular direction. The thing I don't like about it is the compulsory aspect of it and
Yes.
how it has that feeling, that flavor of dressing your dog up in a Christmas outfit that your dog doesn't want to wear, that
Yeah.
you're making these guys mascots for something they never agreed to, and then putting them in the news and holding them up as bigots if they've got some sort of objection to
Right.
it, and
Right.
not really asking, well, if they're not into it, then why are we doing this? Why are we
Mm-hmm.
making them a mascot for something that they're not willing mascots for?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with this? It just seems like it's part of this activist impulse to try to make this part of public life that's neutral read as their thing, and therefore it's normalized, and then they've won. But if you're doing that and you're not actually getting the consent of the people involved, then I just, at some level, that's what bothers me. Apart from my searing rage-filled homophobia, I mean, that's
Yeah.
the other thing. That's
There's
the
that.
other aspect that
Yeah.
I have an issue with there. So
Yeah.
it's the
That's obvious.
combination,
Yeah.
combination of things. I can't help it. I'm just a very manly man, as everybody
Yeah.
says, and
Well,
traditional.
as your therapist, I can help you work through that.
I appreciate that. This is actually next to a therapist's office where I do this
Hmm.
from. You just read into that. Speaking of analyzing men and masculinity, I don't know if you saw this. If you didn't, I have a funny quote from it, Katie. Did you see this New York Times article titled "Why?" Oh, this is so professional. I need to show you this before I get to this topic. I can't not show you this. To just because the pride is ending and sports pride is ending. I want to Trace, do you have this clip for us right here? Do you have this clip of baseball pride gone wrong? I want this. Can we pull that up to the stage and play this for everybody?
Donovan converge. It'll be Donovan with the call. Wilson, good communication, backs off, and there's your first out. Disability Pride Night is Thursday, July 10th, and with a theme ticket, fans take home a Cardinals cap featuring the Disability Pride flag and Cardinals in Braille. Details at cardinals.com/theme.
Did he get fired?
He didn't. And that's one of the reasons why I'm laughing.
Yeah.
I love that he did not. I believe he apologized. It was announced that Chip Carey was the guy who did that. It was announced that no punishment would come from it. And a few years ago, the Oakland A's announcer did get fired for a slip up when trying to say, and I'm going to try to not slip up, referring to the Negro Leagues Museum. Oh, God, thank God that went okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. Oh, you just got to stick that particular
Yeah.
landing right there. He did not stick that landing. He was talking quickly. I'd met him before. He seemed like a nice guy. I thought he was a good announcer, and he ended up getting fired, which to me was just mimetic hysteria. And there were people arguing against me and saying I had a mask off moment when I spoke out against the firing, which of course was true. They understand I am hiding,
Yeah.
just this pulsating racism. And I thought it was good that he said it the way he said it. They read that, but I didn't represent that. But anyway, yeah, that's why I can laugh at that. I can laugh at that because the guy didn't get fired, but it was pretty funny. So anyway,
That's good.
it was
He'll
good.
be AI now too soon.
The AI, the robot announcer.
Yeah,
Is that what we're going for
it
right
is.
there?
And then robot podcaster after that.
Problem is, if the robot announcer does that, we can't question it. I mean,
True.
that's a choice, and who are we to say it's the wrong choice right there? Yes. Okay. So back to what I was saying. There was a lot of hand wringing in the pages of the New York Times about men such as myself not reading novels.
Mhm.
Why did the novel reading man disappear? The article was titled. Now, did you read this? You probably saw people talking about it if you didn't read it.
I did read it, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
I feel like I
It's
can answer that question very simply. Where
please.
did the novel reading man go? He got an Xbox. He got a cell phone.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that he admitted to liking David Foster Wallace and then got
Uh,
absolutely
yeah,
pilloried online.
on Blue
And
Sky.
he slinked away to his Xbox and his
Yeah.
porn and never was heard from again. Yeah, it's just funny. Somebody was saying that it's weird how they say men are so culturally dominant and then speak about them in the way I was talking about Clayton Kershaw's religiosity with no theory of mind, which if they were so culturally dominant, had been so culturally dominant, maybe we'd know. Oliver Traldi said, I'm told that the male experience has dominated the whole history of literary and artistic output, and yet we might as well be aliens in much of contemporary culture. And
Yeah.
to support what he's saying, I do have a quote. It does tie into sports a bit. A quote from this article. Uh, as more American men fill their hours with the crude talk shows of the manosphere, in quotes, online gambling, and addictive multiplayer games, the humble novel, consumed alone, requiring thought and patience, can look like a panacea. Are you bullish on the humble novel replacing sports and Manosphere podcasts and online gambling and whatnot?
I think this is maybe overly optimistic. I think that the novel, any book, whether novel or not, has a very difficult competitor with the phone in our pockets. And
Yeah.
I think there actually is something sort of sad about the lack of reading. Do you read? Do you read novels or do you read for
I
pleasure?
don't read. I think it's stupid.
Yeah, it's
It's
gay.
so it's totally gay, and that's not that that's not there's anything wrong with that, but it's
Right.
totally gay, and I hate it.
You
Not that
you got
there's
to say
anything
that for
wrong.
another 3 days.
I don't read fiction. I used
Hmm.
to read fiction. I read a lot of nonfiction,
Hmm. Do you
and
read for pleasure or for work?
both, which has screwed it up in a
Uh-huh.
way. And I mean, this is just getting way too into my process, but I keep reading for work to interview people when they write memoirs, such as the one that you've read, but I've yet to nail that particular kind of podcast. I'm
Yeah.
not good at having that conversation about somebody's book. I think part of it is because I've got this little teacher's pet urge to prove to them that I actually read it, which is
Hmm.
stupid. They should assume that I read it,
Right.
but I want to show them like, yeah, that part where you
Right.
said that was cool. That was cool right
Book
there.
talks are
Yeah.
really hard. I try to
Ugh.
avoid doing book talks. That takes a particular type of person because you're the other thing that makes it hard is that you've got an audience that you can't assume has read the book. Novels,
Mhm.
like I people pitch me on having them on who've written novels all the time, and I just won't
Mhm.
do it because
Yeah.
also I don't like to analyze literature. That
Well,
is gay.
well, it's also like, let's say you really you gave it a B plus. That's not good enough for a talk like
True.
that.
True.
If there were
True.
some choices artistically that, versus if it's information, I just love having information. And I just had somebody on who wrote about the young Turks of football coaching in 2012 who were on the dead named Washington Redskins
Hmm.
and took over the league. And I can just draw off the information. I can just do it like that. And I think that's part of why that's happened is that I'm tending to interview people who write nonfiction books.
Right.
But really, it's that depressing kind of optimizer's perspective where if I'm reading a nonfiction book, I at least know that I'm interested in the subject material. We're
Hmm.
done on that. We already have that. If it's a novel, then it's somebody's journey into who knows where.
Right.
And I don't have time for all that,
Hmm.
in my opinion. Maybe I should. And I hate admitting this, Katie. This is a very uncool thing to admit. In high school, I was the president of my school's
Oof.
literary club.
Oof. Oof.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't
Sounds
tell any
like.
of my friends this. I did
Yeah.
it, and even worse,
At the
I
time,
did
they didn't know.
they didn't. I didn't tell them about it. I did it purely for
It was a
you
girl.
needed not even that. No, it was a little striver type of thing of I need to
Hmm.
be in some sort of club, I like to read. I'm going to
Right.
be in the literary club, and then through seniority and maybe the novelty of being the only boy in it, I became the president of it, and that's how I ended up reading
Patriarchy.
Patriarchy one.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up reading A Clockwork Orange and
Yeah.
other books, and became an annoying little pedant. God damn it!
Pendant.
I see. I'm already getting stupid because I don't read enough.
Yeah.
Where I suddenly knew that movies weren't like the books, and I would remark
Right.
upon that. So,
Right. But
yeah,
now, I mean,
no.
new movies and TV, we have so many more options for entertainment now. Like I was talking the other day with my wife about how I was nostalgic about the time when we were kids and TV was all reruns. Do you remember that? You just like
Yeah,
I just didn't watch TV in the summer
I
because
would
you'd already
run.
seen that episode of Full House.
I would run home and see the majesty that was the Wayans Brothers sitcom. I can't even remember what it's called, but I would just watch that, and I thought it was quite good, and I would
Hmm.
develop opinions about it, and
Hmm.
everybody would watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Right.
Yeah, that was it. All seemed amazing when you were
Right.
a
But then
kid.
there's this big gap in the summertime when everything is reruns. And so I just didn't watch TV in the summertime. It was like a dead zone for television. It was like
Yeah.
the only thing on was news and something that you saw like 4 months ago. So I just didn't do it. And now we have TV, really good TV at our fingertips, all on our phones, on our all the time. And so books just have a lot to compete against in a way that they didn't used to. And I do think there is something about the politics of who reads books. Richard Hanania, I'm a Hanania head, a dickhead, if you will. He
Major
says,
Fananiac.
yeah,
I've heard of you. Yes.
he says, liberals read, conservatives watch TV. I think
Yeah.
everybody watches TV at this point. It's like, but yes, okay, apparently conservatives don't read that much. Men too. It is true that publishing is dominated by women. I went to a bookstore a couple weeks ago and my wife wanted to get a book for her dad. This was a bookstore in Seattle, just like a small neighborhood bookstore. Her dad's a conservative. There was nothing in there for him. There's not,
Mm.
she ended up getting him a biography on like an Arctic explorer. And that was the closest thing that she could find that was like non-political and not just the tone was just something that would appeal to like a 70-year-old conservative. There was one book in this bookstore and the rest of it. And this is not an overtly political bookstore. It's just your average city bookstore. I don't think the people who own and manage these things are even thinking we might have a conservative wander in here at some point because they kind of don't.
Well, I think there was a story today about a bookstore in San Francisco that proclaimed that we're not going to sell any of J.K. Rowling's books, which is a strange choice for a
Yeah,
bookstore to
it
not
is.
sell works of the best-selling author
Right.
of the generation.
I'm sure Amazon is thanking them.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I don't know. In a way, it might be more of a question of why do women still read? Because when you
Hmm.
put it like that and you lay it all out, similar to what we started with, to bring it full circle, where we shouldn't be asking why is Gen Z not drinking, but why did we ever drink?
Right.
It's just remarkable that women remain relative holdouts with their book clubs and their
Yeah.
flights of imagination and
Right.
creativity that we have so eschewed because there's so much entertainment competing
Well,
against it.
okay. So books don't sell very well anymore. I heard a
Mm.
couple years ago, I don't know if this is true, but I'm going to assume that it was. I heard a couple years ago that to get on the New York Times bestseller list, you have to sell 6,000 books in a week. That's nothing. And yeah, that's still more than 99% of books that ever sell. There's one genre that still does really well, and that's romance.
Mm.
So women are reading books, yes, but they're reading horny books.
Yeah, they're reading book porn
Yes.
books. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Men are
yeah, this
just more
is
visual, maybe.
yeah, I would tend to agree that men are more visual. And yeah, I wanted to salute the ladies. I wanted to clean up my reputation.
Hmm.
And but there you go. Now I can't. Now I'm
Sorry.
judgmental again. Now it's not really an advantage of them over us. And what are you gonna do? Uh Katie, this has been fantastic. You've been fantastic. I have an idea of what you might want to plug for us before we wrap this up, is we're at the top of the hour. What should we be on the lookout for?
My book, it's
Oh
called
yeah.
Drink Your Way Sober, the science-based method to break free from alcohol. It is not a horny book, I promise you. Not horny. There's actually zero sex in it. That was probably an oversight on my part, but I thought, my parents might read this, so I'm just gonna pretend that sex doesn't exist.
Yeah, let's get you to that 6,000 mark. Let's get you to
Thank
the
you.
bestseller, and
Thanks,
I will
Ethan.
endeavor to have you on and do my first successful book podcast. I don't
Great.
think any of them have been. I don't regret any of them, but I don't think any of them have necessarily hit that mark. Unlike this episode, this was fantastic. Thanks so much. Thanks to all of you. Until next week, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. See you, everybody.